Hello, it's me again. I'm not sure yet what the title of this video will be. We shall see, but today's video is just going to be a little ramble about all the things that I have been learning, processing, integrating over the past 2 weeks. Also, especially ever since I started doing mirror work, which was the process that I've been doing pretty much every day now for the past 1 to 2 weeks, and I made a video about it. And I'll link it somewhere here or in the description box, and the video was called How to Feel Good About Yourself No Matter What. So yeah, I have been religiously doing that process. And so this video is just a little mix and match of epiphanies and learnings or discoveries that I have, or realizations that I've gained over the past 2 weeks. So the very first point that I was recently reminded of and that I want to convey here is that the universe shows us the exact things that we fear in our external world and external reality for us to work on transmuting those fears. And this sounds vague, but this might apply to you if you've ever been in a situation that is undesirable and you find yourself thinking like, wow, how could this happen to me of all people? And specifically that thought, it's like because you perceive yourself to have worked really hard or like developed yourself really well in a specific area, but like the exact undesirable outcome still happens to you and you're just like in disbelief. So I'll give you some examples, and what I mean by like the universe shows us the very things that we fear for us to face those fears internally. So just a few examples would be perfectionism or people pleasing or something else, and these are mechanisms that we use to kind of cover up those underlying fears. So like perfectionism is our response to masking over our fear of not being good enough if we're not perfect or we're not doing our work perfectly, and then we feel like a sense of inadequacy. And that, so underneath that little mask, they're all like pretty much masks basically, or like defense mechanisms. Underneath that mask is a fear of not being enough. And then under people pleasing, that would be a fear of not being liked or not being loved. And then underneath that would be the very core wound of I'm not lovable. And like I said in my previous video, How to Feel Good About Yourself No Matter What, the two most common core wounds, like the deepest wounds, because wounds have so many, and wounds and fears have so many layers, but the two most common core wounds are I am not enough and I'm not lovable, or I'm not worthy of love, or any other blessing that you want to call into your life. And if you are ever doing shadow work, a lot of the process involves asking why, or like questioning your beliefs, your thought patterns. And so like a lot of the process is really asking like, why do I feel this way? And like, okay, like why do I feel this? Why do you feel this? And why do I fear this? And then like if the why is asked enough times, eventually you'll get to the core wound, and that is the space that requires or is asking for the most unconditional love for you to give to it. And so like I said, you may or may not find that most of the time everything, all so-called problems, trace back to that core wound, or every trigger, no matter how superficial or how big or how small, it all traces back to one of those two common core wounds. And like I said, I talk way more in depth about this in my previous video, but it is just very interesting the many different ways that a deep core wound can manifest. Like, can manifest in like overworking, being addicted to certain things, or procrastination, perfectionism, so many things. They just manifest in different ways and different patterns for different people. And if you're wondering why I talk about wounds so much in shadow work, it's really because these core wounds, like self-love, unconditional self-love, is almost a never-ending journey, and it can continue into the next lifetimes as well, if multiple lifetimes, if that concept resonates with you. It doesn't have to. And so yeah, the work of healing and self-love really almost never ends. And I don't know if that sounds tiring to some people, but I feel, to me at least, like it's quite comforting, because it's like you will never ever be able to be perfect. Like you will never be able to be 100% not triggered, but the magic of healing and the shadow work journey does propel you to just be more at a place of equanimity and peace way more easily and consistently, regardless of the external situations or circumstances around you, which is a lot to me also about taking back your power instead of letting your emotions be dictated by the things happening around you. It's like you are able to tend to that and stabilize yourself on your own internally. So pretty much you're like I don't want to say untouchable, but like low-key, like almost, you know, like if like no one's able to bother you or get to you or get on your nerves as much, wouldn't that be such a peaceful life? And I think last time when I was younger, I had this notion of, oh, you know, when I'm older, I can't wait to, I don't know, maybe go hermit in a mountain, like be like a monk in the temple. And sure, those are one of the paths to enlightenment and spiritual growth if that calls to you. And I don't know if I like aspire to do that anymore, but for the majority of people who are not going down that solitary meditation route of like renunciating your daily life, like your daily normal life that we're all living as human beings in society, all of our growth and self-love and unconditional love lessons always happens in relation to other people, in relation to what they are triggering in us and what they activate in us. And yeah, like just I guess a little reminder also to myself that like everyone is in your life to either gift to you directly or gift to you indirectly by teaching you a valuable lesson. And that could be indirectly via a trigger that kind of pushes you to look into yourself, to question, why am I being so reactive to this certain thing that is happening supposedly to me from this other person? Obviously, again, don't cherry pick. Like this does not apply to extreme situations where, for example, you are in a abusive relationship or something. Yeah, like if that's your basic safety, then like please like leave. Like don't let this person like just be discerning, like have your boundaries up. No, you can help it, leave people in situations who are unsafe or unhealthy for you. And yeah, like that's not a reason to stay in any unhealthy dynamic by thinking that, oh, like there's more, like we can learn from each other or something, or like have more spiritual self-growth. Like no. Anyways, going back to my original point, so I was giving some examples of like fears that the universe shows to us in our external world that are invitations to transmute these fears essentially. So some examples were perfectionism and people pleasing. So another example would be fear of authority, and a personal example that I can illustrate for myself was this one thing happened. I remember when I was at my 9 to 5, I was still considering myself to be a good worker and like a hard worker. There was this misunderstanding one day whereby I thought that the systems that in the role that I was doing at that office job, the systems that I was using or the methodology that I was using was the correct way, because somehow I had registered in my brain or like in myself from like a previous meeting that like this was the way that we are going to do this from now on. So I was just like following that work system. And then on one particular day, I think it was a supervisor asked me like why I was doing that. And I was like, wasn't this what we were supposed to do? Like regarding as per this past meeting that we had last time. And they were like, no, I never said that. And I was like, what? And I mean, this is not to blame that supervisor or anything, but like I felt so gaslighted. I'm not saying the supervisor was gaslighting me. I'm saying I felt really gaslighted. And I was like, what? Like I completely like registered in my brain that this was what we've been supposed to do ever since that meeting. And I think it was just like a good long 3 seconds of both of us looking at each other and just her maintaining her stance of like, yeah, no, like we never said that. Like we are not, like this is not how we do it. And I was just like, okay, well, there's not really anything that I can respond, because if like someone in a position of authority is saying that this is not how it works, then that just is that. Like there's not really any room for me to argue. And I feel like this is an example of not just regarding fear of authority, but also perfectionism, because like when you're a hard worker, I feel like you have really high standard, or at least I would always have really high standards for myself and like take pride in like, oh, like I'm a hard worker and stuff, like everything's perfect. Like it all contributes to that so-called perfect image and just doing things perfectly overall. And so I talk about this way more in depth in one of my Patreon videos, which is called, I think it was called like Healing Fear of Authority or something. And I'll link it in the description box. But essentially in that video, I was talking about how my fear of authority is extremely pronounced, like maybe more so than average, because, and I had to find this out in like past life regressions, but like in a couple past lives, I happened to be in masculine deferential roles to like higher up authority figures or something, but then I was completely persecuted at one point, or like just like persecuted. I think that's like the only word that I can use, by authority figures above me. And it's so interesting because when I was regressing back to those particular lifetimes, I could feel like in myself like the amount of like betrayal and like hurt and like grief from that sudden like treatment. So yeah, this is not to like self-victimize or anything. Like I completely own that it is my like past life trauma and like fear to like work through, and I feel like I have been working through that by doing regression and whatnot. But yeah, that just goes to say, because I already had that fear at the time and I didn't really process 2 years ago much about like fear of authority. Like it was just something that I had and it was like on autopilot. It was just in the subconscious throughout my whole life, I guess. And because I had that fear already that was unaddressed, that moment or that experience was very, very scathing for me. And I held on to that tension and the experience for like, I don't know, a couple days. Yeah, I remember thinking later on that day, like, wow, like I was just thinking to myself, like I do my work so detailedly, and you know, I've always seen myself as someone who like does my work like right and like is a hard worker and like just does everything right and diligently. Like I guess whether, I don't know about as a student, but like as an employee at least, and I would like to like please authority. That's what I was thinking at that time. And yeah, so looking back, I totally see now how that event was the universe showing me completely like what I was fearing all along, which was A, not doing my work right or right enough, and B, as a result, upsetting authority or something. And those were the things that subconsciously like I feared underneath all that perfectionism and that huge desire to perform really well, essentially. And so yeah, was I in a way indirectly attracting what I feared underneath? I would say probably, even though my actions said otherwise. But in this case, my actions would not be enough because they're operating from a place of fear. And that's something also, a side note, all my decisions lately, I feel like I have to check in with myself all the time and be like, am I making this decision out of a place of fear or out of love and freedom? That's just something that I've been asking myself a lot over the past year, like especially regarding big decisions, but also small decisions sometimes. So yeah, that's one example. And then another example would be to do with people pleasing. So I used to be roommates with someone in the past, and they would be someone who's really good with their boundaries and will also respect my boundaries. And I think one day they came home from work and they were extremely upset because they had perceived that I did something like in the house arrangements or something that like was very inconsiderate to them, and they completely thought that I was like taking up too much space or something, and like they were just quite angry. And that was the first time that this person was angry with me, so I was like, oh my goodness. And something that this person said to my face was, that's very inconsiderate of you. And in my mind I was like, me? Inconsiderate? Like me? Like I feel like my whole life I've seen myself as someone who is like giving and like considerate and like always thinking of other people and always trying to please people, TBH. So yeah, like that sentence really shocked me, and like I was just standing there like completely stunned, and I was like, look, the reality is I actually did this because of this, and I did this because of it, and like it's not, I didn't mean to like take up your space. And I won't go into the details, of course, of how the conversation went, but essentially that person quickly like and suddenly realized that like a misunderstanding, that they had completely misunderstood my actions, and they thought that I had this intention behind doing something, but I had no intention of doing that. And like they were just immediately like stepping back, and they were like, oh, I can't remember if they apologized, but a few weeks after they did refer back to that incident, and they did express regret because like it was very obvious that they had misunderstood like my actions or like my way of operating. And yeah, I guess the person the person had some regret, which obviously like I hold no grudges against them. And I understand people get easily triggered by particular things more so than other things sometimes, so I just had no reason to hold on to any grudge because I could tell the person was already feeling quite bad about doing that and like lashing out to me or lashing out at me. So yeah, but that incident was still quite shocking for me and my nervous system, because I rarely have someone like confront me like so critically in front of my face like that for like something that I was like casually doing. So yeah, and I like took a few days to mull over this, and I was like wondering like why. I think I just spent a long time being stunned at like, wow, that someone would call me inconsiderate. Like I could not get over that. And after a while, like later on, I probably did like shadow work or something, but looking back at that incident, I could completely see how I was shown that event that was quite upsetting and shocking, to completely show me like what I fear. Like what I fear is people thinking that I'm inconsiderate and like bad for like putting myself first and things like that. And this event just goes to show that like, yeah, like my people pleasing patterns don't like they don't work, because they're just a defense mechanism that I operate from out of fear. And the deeper fear obviously is that like I am, you know, I'll be unliked, and then a deeper fear under that would be eventually the core wound of like I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy of love, or I won't be accepted. So yeah, like I hope it's starting to become clear like the pattern of like how this might manifest in life, in external life. Essentially that sometimes when incredulous events happen and you're like, why would this happen to me out of all people? Like for example, like I was called inconsiderate when I consider myself to be like literally such a considerate person, where it's like really an invitation or a wake-up call to be like, are you really being considerate, or like are you being truly considerate out of a place of wanting to, or are you being so-called considerate to abandon yourself and to please other people and to gain favor that way? So yeah, like all these very like subtle nuances, and I feel like if I never had these external things happen to me, or shall we say for me, I never would have paused to look at how I am operating from defense mechanisms that are just like out of like some sort of subconscious fear. And obviously those are the things that drive me to do shadow work and look within and do mirror work, like I mentioned, or that I described in my previous video of how to feel good about yourself. And another example that I can give is regarding perfectionism. So in one of my Patreon videos, I was also talking more in depth about perfectionism and how in that case, in that particular story, like it showed up for me in like my theater environment. So again, same thing, like I thought I was doing what we were taught to do originally from the very beginning, and like once I'm taught something, like I stick to it. Like I'm pretty good at following directions, and it's always like when I first learn something or get a direction, like I will ask questions to clarify. Like I will get the details of like what I have been or what I was instructed to do, so that I can do well and like perform well, I guess, perform the task well, and like, I don't know, perhaps carry on more of that perfectionism. So that's just kind of my tendency or my pattern. And what happened during theater rehearsal was eventually one day when like so this was to do with a dance, like a choreography. And one day the choreographer wasn't there, but I knew that I was doing the dance right, and turns out the other kids behind me were doing it at a completely different rhythm because they were following someone else, another dancer, who actually was following a completely different rhythm, and they were not ashamed to basically admit that like, yeah, like, I'm really bad at rhythm, like just don't follow me, basically don't follow me. But it's like because all the kids and the other dancers can see her at the very front, like everyone would naturally follow her, and this person is not in my peripheral vision, so I cannot see what other people are following. And so I just stick to like the original thing that I was taught, that we were all taught, but everyone else was I guess happily following along this other wrong rhythm that was set by someone else. And not only that, but one of the kids actually called me out and was like, you're doing the wrong rhythm. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I'm the only one doing the rhythm that we were taught. And so obviously ultimately it worked out smoothly because I talked with the other person who was leading the rhythm for everyone, and she was like, yeah, like I completely forgot what the original rhythm was, like let's just. And so what ended up happening was I asked her to teach me the rhythm that she is now setting for everyone else, so that I can just like be in sync with everybody else instead of obviously like following what I think is right. But yeah, and so like it just concluded very smoothly in summary. But I just remember like coming home that day and like being really frustrated. Like again, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I know that I like did this right, I put in so much effort to like make sure I'm right, and yet this still happened. Like this situation still happened. And so I was just feeling quite incredulous about it. And that is just like another example of like, oh, out of all people, why me? But of course, and I was probably used to it by then, I got to do like some inner reflection and shadow work of like what this situation that seemed completely out of my hands, out of my control, no matter how well I like made sure I learned the choreography like from the very beginning. Yeah, no matter how perfect I was striving to be, the universe was obviously showing me that like it does not matter, because like your perfectionism is coming out of a place of like fear and like inadequacy. And yeah, just like more balance was being called for. So yeah, obviously I had to do like more shadow work, and the conclusion from that shadow work was really I had to face the inner parts of myself that were so freaking scared of like being imperfect or being seen as like doing something wrong or just not performing amazingly or perfectly. And so yeah, like those parts of me were really calling out for me to send those parts a lot more gentleness and compassion, and yeah, deeper security and confidence in myself and my abilities, instead of trying to literally, I don't know, to cover all that with perfectionism, which is low-key quite micromanaging and like controlling, like, and also controlling over more so over myself, like micromanaging over myself and like my behaviors, my actions, and how well I'm performing each task. And yeah, just addressing how my whole life I've been a really harsh critic on myself. And even shortly before that incident happened, during theater rehearsal, I could already see some instances of how that was coming up for me, or how perfectionism was coming up for me in quite an unhealthy way, because whenever I would make a mistake, I would be extremely quick to criticize myself first in quite a harsh way, in my opinion. Like, I think that was quite harsh. So yeah, honestly, so I probably saw the climax of that little like dance hiccup thing like coming, probably because I was already like so ready to criticize myself for when something, or when I would mess something up, and like no one else was looking to criticize me, you know what I mean? Like it was just me. Like I was just ready to point myself out before anybody else can. And yeah, so people pleasing is also a nice segue into my next point, which is about how I have been trying to heal my hypersensitivity to other people's perceptions. And also I've been doing my best to truly surrender needing external validation of any sort. And I feel like as long as we have an ego, probably it is so common for almost everybody to want some sort of recognition, or like just like, yeah, appreciation for whatever they are doing or how they are coming across. And yeah, also for a lot of people, like success in life could encompass recognition, and there is nothing wrong with that at all. And yeah, like a healthy ego can always be achieved and balanced out, but I do feel like me surrendering this lately like has led me or helped me to be a lot more authentic in how I express myself, whether that's to do with putting out written songs, not knowing if it is appealing to others or not. And another example would be, I feel more playful and joyful and less hesitant now when I am talking about these things to you, to the public, compared to even my videos from last year, where I would kind of police myself on a lot of things and ideas that I wanted to say out, but I would always like think twice about, okay, like would this be politically right? Would this be morally right to say? Like, is this too much? Like, yeah, so I feel like I've let go of a lot of that. Maybe there are still things to let go of still, but I feel more free basically in my speech and like how I am conveying all these messages that I am right now, and it feels a lot more freeing to speak this way. Obviously though, I still do have my Patreon, which is a more private bubble where I'm like completely way more raw and unfiltered and just like playful and I guess childlike, and I blab all of my personal stories there. But yeah, just feeling more free to express in this way more authentic way on a public channel compared to previous YouTube videos from last year already feels really good. So yes, it all circles back to how truly surrendering external validation has been helping me, but I still feel very recently, and by recently I mean like the past 1 to 2 weeks, I feel like that surrendering could be way more and way deeper. So something that I've been trying to surrender more of and let go more of lately has been the need to control outcomes, which sounds very similar to releasing the need for external validation. And maybe it is quite similar actually, but I'm thinking in this case more so for interactions and communication with other people, because what I realized lately that what I tend to do when I'm, for example, texting or communicating with someone and I'm not sure if they will be, maybe like I am needing to convey a message which may not be the best news for them. Maybe it's not terrible news for them, but also just will not be the most pleasing news for them. So yeah, this definitely does like play into people pleasing as well. But what I realize that I tend to do is I will analyze the undertones of like, or like how this person might receive this. And because I also am a sensitive empath, what I sometimes even go to the extent of doing is feeling out how this person is feeling, and then feeling out how this person would most likely feel when I do send, for example, this text in this way or with this tone. And sure, that might come off to some people as being considerate, because I feel like I do think, honestly, too much about other people's feelings when I am conversing with them, especially more so during conflict resolution. But again, right, like if that's imbalanced, that could just lead to like an abandoning of like, okay, like I'm like so focused on how this person might respond and how this person might feel, instead of being focused enough on what do I want to say? Like, what is true for me now? Yeah, so that's something that I have been asking myself more and more of lately when I am just like conversing, like what is true for me now to say? And like if that person like has a little bit of like a reaction, like is that the end of the world? Is it really? And if it is, then I guess that's another reason to look deeper and do shadow work and mirror work of like why I might be affected if somebody reacts in an upset way to something that I am saying non-violently and non-offensively, and that to something that is just like an authentic truth that I want to express. And actually I had someone tell me the other day that this tendency of like analyzing undertones in any specific interaction and trying to control, like controlling one's communication in an effort to try to control the outcome or how the person might respond. I was told recently that this is distorted masculine energy. And I'm like, wow, yeah, I completely see that. Like that is like a lot of control. Like maybe it might come off, it might be masked with the so-called intention of like being considerate for other people and other people's feelings, but yeah, like at what point is it too much control, you know? So yeah, something that I've been asking myself a lot, what is true for me now? What is true for me to say, to express? And even right now, like I like am continually asking myself this as I like put this message out there, and just not being overly responsible for like if someone happens to take it as an offense or takes it personally, or like the universe has already shown me anyway from the past experiences that I just told you about regarding people pleasing. If I like even if I do have that mask of consideration, I'm still gonna upset anyone anyways, like even if it's for the completely wrong reason and for like, over like a complete misunderstanding. But no matter what, like at some points I'm gonna upset people anyways. So, and it really is on them to not take personally, or to try to not take personally. So yeah, that's been a real lesson that the universe has been shoving in my face again and again to like look at within me, and to see how emotionally independent I can be from, or like emotionally detached I can be from other people's reactions. Okay, I feel like I've just talked so much about this topic, so I'm gonna leave it there. And if this happens to resonate with you at all, I'll definitely love to know. Or like if you have your own insights or examples that are similar to mine, to what I just described, I would love to hear and to know as well. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.